Walt could have told you, to the penny, how much he saved on gas in any given month of his adult life, going back 3 decades. He could not have told you, within $20,000, what his coworker's account was worth, and he never thought to ask, because the question didn't occur to him as relevant. He was tracking the wrong number for 31 years, with real discipline, real consistency, genuine care, and the tracking itself, the precision of it, the pride he took in it, was the trap. Not because tracking is bad. Because he was measuring the wrong ledger with exceptional instruments, and no instrument, however precise, fixes a problem of aim. You were handed the wrong scoreboard. That's the whole thesis of this series, laid out fully in the frugal trap. Today I want to get specific about what the right scoreboard actually looks like, week to week, because knowing you're tracking the wrong thing and knowing exactly what to track instead turn out to be two very different pieces of advice, and most people only ever get the first one. I once sat across the table from a woman I'll call Renata, going over her finances for the first time, and she opened a spreadsheet that genuinely impressed me before I understood what it was actually doing to her. 11 columns: groceries, gas, subscriptions, dining out, home maintenance, gifts, pet supplies, each broken down further into subcategories most accountants wouldn't bother with. She'd been keeping it for 9 years, updated nightly, every receipt photographed and logged before she went to bed. She could tell me, without checking, that she'd spent 14% more on dining out that quarter than the same quarter the year before, and she had a theory about why. A new restaurant had opened near her office. I asked her the only question that actually mattered, and she couldn't answer it: what was her net worth? Not approximately, she genuinely didn't know, within $20,000 or $30,000, whether her retirement accounts and savings, taken together, had grown or shrunk over the past year. She could tell you her dining out trend to the percentage point. She could not tell you the one number that would have told her whether 9 years of this extraordinary effort had moved her forward at all. Contrast that with a man I'll call Julian, who I met around the same period, doing something almost embarrassingly simple. 1 column. Net worth, checked and logged on the first of every month, nothing else. He couldn't tell you what he'd spent on dining out that quarter. He genuinely didn't track it, and he wasn't especially frugal. He ate out plenty, by his own admission. But he could tell you, instantly, that his number had grown by roughly 9% over the past year, and by roughly comparable amounts most years before that. Here's what should unsettle you about that comparison: Renata's system required dramatically more effort, more discipline, more nightly attention, for 9 straight years. Julian's system required about 90 seconds a month. And Julian was the one who could actually answer the only question that determines whether any of this is working. Effort and usefulness aren't the same axis. Renata had enormous amounts of the first and almost none of the second, and for years, nobody, including Renata, noticed the gap, because the spreadsheet looked so thorough that it felt like it had to be doing something important. When I finally showed her both numbers side by side, 9 years of exhaustive category tracking against 9 years of simply not knowing the one figure that mattered, she went quiet for a long moment. Then she said something I've heard versions of many times since: I thought I was the responsible one. She was. She'd simply been responsible about the wrong ledger, with a level of care most people never bring to either one. Her profession made this almost inevitable, in hindsight. She'd spent 15 years as an insurance claims adjuster, trained to catch a $40 discrepancy in a stack of receipts that would make most reviewers' eyes glaze over. That skill made her exceptional at her job. Applied to her own finances, without anyone telling her the skill was pointed at the wrong target, it became 9 years of world-class attention to a ledger that was never going to be the one that mattered most. What changed for Renata wasn't more data. She had 9 years of data already, more granular than most professional bookkeepers keep for their clients. What changed was a single new column, added to a completely different, much shorter spreadsheet: 1 row per month, 1 number, net worth. She kept the old 11-column sheet going for a while out of habit, then let it lapse a few months in, once she noticed she hadn't opened it in 3 weeks and hadn't missed it. 2 years later, that one number had moved further than the previous 9 years of exhaustive category tracking had ever told her whether she was moving at all. She still remembers the exact month she stopped needing the old spreadsheet to feel like she understood her own finances. It was the month she trusted the one number to tell her more than 11 ever had. I want to be careful here, because it would be easy to hear Renata's story and conclude the lesson is, stop tracking spending. That's not it, and I'll come back to that directly later in this video, because it deserves its own answer rather than a quick aside. The actual lesson is narrower and, I think, more useful. Effort spent on the wrong ledger doesn't transfer to the right one, no matter how much of it there is. Renata didn't need to work harder. She'd already outworked almost everyone I know on this subject, for 9 consecutive years. She needed one new column on a different piece of paper, and the 9 years of unmatched effort on the old one didn't disqualify her from benefiting from it immediately. It just meant 9 years had passed before she did. None of this required Julian to be smarter than Renata, or luckier, or more naturally suited to money. If anything, by his own admission, he was the less disciplined one in almost every other visible way. He ate out plenty, he didn't budget, he'd tell you himself he wasn't particularly good with money in the conventional sense. What he had wasn't superior willpower. It was a system that only asked 90 seconds of him, once a month, pointed at the one figure that actually mattered. That's the part one want you to take from this comparison more than any other. The winning system here wasn't the harder one. It was the one aimed correctly, which turned out to also be the easier one to sustain for years at a stretch. Tracking what you spend measures the bounded game. It has a floor, remember, there's a limit to how low it can go, and once you're near that floor, more tracking doesn't create more progress. It just creates more attention on a number that's already stopped moving much, the way Renata's dining out percentage moved by a point or two while the number that actually mattered to her future sat completely unmeasured. Tracking what's growing measures the unbounded game, the one with no ceiling. And here's the part that matters most, the part one want you to actually sit with. What you measure becomes what you optimize for, whether you intend that or not. Measure spending obsessively, and your brain optimizes for spending less, which has a floor. Measure growth, and your brain starts optimizing for growth, for adding to the number that compounds, not just defending the number that doesn't. This isn't a small psychological quirk. It's closer to a law. Attention is the scarcest resource any of us actually has, more scarce than money, and wherever you point it repeatedly, your decisions bend toward it, almost without your permission. Renata's nightly ritual wasn't neutral bookkeeping. It was 9 years of training her own attention onto the ledger with a ceiling, one receipt at a time, whether she meant to train it there or not. I don't think Renata's instinct was wrong, by the way. I want to be fair to her, because I meet people with her exact instinct constantly, and it usually comes from a genuinely good place. Tracking spending in granular detail feels responsible because it is a form of responsibility, just aimed at a target with a ceiling. The mistake isn't caring about your spending. It's mistaking that care for the whole job, when it's actually the smaller half of it, and often the half that stops paying dividends first. So if attention is the lever, and I think it is, more than any spreadsheet, any app, any budgeting method you could adopt, then the only real question left is where you point it. Not, should I pay attention to my finances, which almost everyone already answers correctly. The harder, more specific question is which single number deserves the bulk of that attention, on a repeating basis, for the next several decades. Get that answer right, and a great deal of the rest sorts itself out with far less effort than Renata ever spent. Get it wrong, and you can apply Renata-level diligence for a decade and still not know, at the end of it, whether you're actually ahead. If I could get you to track exactly one number, it would be this: total invested assets, checked no more than once a month. Not your checking account. Not your credit card statement. The number that's actually in the unbounded ledger, the one with no ceiling, the one that's supposed to be doing the heavy lifting for the next 30 years. Once a month, not once a day, because daily market movement will make you feel things about a number that, over 30 years, doesn't actually care about any single week. I've watched people check a growing portfolio daily and become more anxious, not less, because a system built to reward decades of patience doesn't produce daily good news on any reliable schedule. The monthly cadence keeps you engaged with the right ledger without letting the noise of the bounded feeling world hijack your attention the way Renata's nightly ritual hijacked hers. Try this literally: pick the first of the month, open exactly one page, write down exactly one number, and close it. That's the entire system. It will feel too simple to be the answer, the same way Julian's one column felt too simple next to Renata's 11. Simple isn't the same as insufficient. It's frequently the entire advantage. Here's a way to make the monthly check feel less abstract. Think of it less like checking a stock price and more like checking your own height as a child. You don't measure it daily expecting visible change, you measure it monthly or yearly, expecting a slow, real trend that individual days can't show you at all. Total invested assets behaves the same way. A single bad week means almost nothing. 12 consecutive monthly entries, moving in the right direction more often than not, mean almost everything, and you can only see that trend if you're actually writing the number down somewhere instead of trusting your memory of roughly how things have been going. I'll give you the exact ritual I use myself, because people ask. First of the month, coffee already made, before the day's other obligations start pulling at me. One page. One number, written by hand, not typed. There's something about the friction of writing it that makes it register differently than a number that populates itself on a screen. Underneath it, the number from a year ago, so the trend is sitting right there in front of me, not buried in a spreadsheet I'd have to go dig for. 30 seconds, most months. That's the entire system, and it's outperformed every more elaborate one I've tried. One more thing about the monthly ritual, because people ask this immediately once they try it: what do you do the first month the number goes down? You write it down anyway. That's the whole answer. A single down month tells you almost nothing on its own. It's one data point in a series that's supposed to run for decades, and treating any one entry as a verdict on the whole system is exactly the mistake that made Renata's nightly ritual so exhausting in the first place. The number going down for a month, or even a difficult year, doesn't mean the ledger is broken. It means you're watching something real, with real variance, instead of something engineered to look smooth. Write it down, log the date, and let the 12th entry, not the first, not the fourth, tell you whether the trend is what you think it is. If you're not sure where to even find that number, it's simpler than it sounds. Most brokerage and retirement accounts show a total balance on the very first screen you land on after logging in, and adding 2 or 3 of those together by hand, once a month, is the entire technical challenge involved. You don't need new software. You don't need a financial advisor to build you a dashboard. You need the login information you almost certainly already have, and 30 seconds on the first of the month to add a short list of numbers together and write down the sum. Walt wasn't bad at tracking. I want to be precise about that, because it's the part people misunderstand. He was exceptional at it, meticulous, consistent, 31 years without missing a month. He simply spent all 31 of those years tracking the ledger that has a ceiling, in exquisite detail, while the ledger with no ceiling sat one login away, untouched, unwatched, working anyway, but without his attention or his additional contributions helping it work any harder than it had to. It's worth sitting with why Walt's version of diligence didn't save him, because it's the same shape of mistake as Renata's, just stretched across 3 decades instead of 9 years. Precision was never the missing ingredient for either of them. Aim was. An aim is a much smaller, much cheaper fix than most people assume. It doesn't require Walt's 31 years of discipline redirected, or Renata's 9 years of nightly attention repointed. It requires noticing, today, which ledger you've been giving your best effort to, and asking honestly whether it's the one with the ceiling or the one without. There's an objection worth taking seriously here, because it's the reasonable one. Doesn't ignoring your spending entirely just lead to overspending? It's a fair question, and the answer isn't stop paying attention to spending forever. It's that spending tracking has a shelf life. It's useful early, while you're building the habits and the automatic structure, the 6 rungs from an earlier video, that make good spending decisions largely automatic. Once that structure exists, checking it nightly for a decade, the way Renata did, stops producing new information and starts producing new anxiety instead. Julian wasn't ignoring his spending out of recklessness. His spending had already been handled, automated, structured, decided once instead of relitigated every night. That's what freed him to spend his remaining attention on the one number that actually needed watching. The lesson isn't never track spending. It's don't keep tracking it forever, in growing detail, after it's already stopped teaching you anything new. And if you're worried that checking only once a month means you'll miss something important, a real emergency, a genuine reason to act, remember that the 6 rungs from an earlier video are still running underneath all of this, all month long, without needing your daily attention to keep functioning. The float catches the small emergencies. The automatic transfer keeps moving money whether you're watching or not. The monthly check isn't your only defense. It's simply the only number you need to look at on purpose, because everything else is already handled by a system that doesn't require you to watch it work. Try this stress test, since specific settle arguments abstractions can't. Imagine logging the one number faithfully for a full decade that happens to include a genuine, ugly downturn, a year where the total invested assets figure drops by a fifth or more from where it stood 12 months earlier. The monthly check investor still writes the number down that month. No panic entry, no skipped page, no switching to daily checking to stay on top of it. They just log it, exactly as they would any other month, and turn to the next line the month after. Across the full decade, including that one ugly year, the trend still runs upward, because one hard year inside 30 is exactly what the unbounded ledger has always looked like up close, never smooth, always upward over a long enough window. The version of this person who checked daily through that same year would have seen the identical eventual number, at the cost of roughly 365 moments of unnecessary alarm along the way. Once you're watching the right number, the next question is what happens when someone hands you the wrong lesson entirely, not through neglect, but by example, without meaning to. There's a story about 2 brothers I've been wanting to tell you, but not yet. First, I want you to meet someone who proved you don't even need Walt's discipline to win the right game, as long as it's aimed at the right ledger, someone who did almost nothing right by every visible standard, and still ended up ahead of a man who did almost everything right by the wrong one. That's next. For now, here's your one task: open one page, write down one number, close it. Do that on the 1st of next month, and whatever spreadsheet you've been keeping instead, you're allowed to let it rest for a while and see if you even miss it.